Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to see all of you here, especially that I'm pretty sure that after 3 days packed with Flutter knowledge, you must be a little bit tired. Luckily, we will be talking today about animations in Flutter. And animations in Flutter are like the most pleasant topic to talk about in the whole Flutter ecosystem. Since the very early days of Flutter, we have been told that we can do any animations, that we can create custom UIs, that we are the owners of whatever we display on the screen. And we proved that to be right. You can see a lot of materials in the internet where people are taking existing applications and easily migrating them to Flutter. Some of us, including myself, also took some dribble designs that were never meant to be implemented in the actual code and rewritten them to Flutter. And this is great. This is great because it shows Flutter potential. It shows that we can actually do anything in Flutter. And it's also pretty fun. I think it's a great activity to do after hours or over the weekend to just do those beautiful things. However, after the weekend comes Monday, and then we get to work and we see a new Jira ticket to load some data from the API and show it in the list view using list styles. And we'll just code it, right? And that's probably some of you know what I'm talking about. Like this is our 9-to-5 job to just get the data, show it on the screen, maybe sometimes put some forms, send it to the server, and that's it. And it creates kind of two worlds of Flutter. One with custom animations and beautiful UIs, and then our work where we just display data. I suspect that some of you has experienced this. My name is Marcin Szałek. I am Flutter developer since the alpha release, and I've been in this position. I've been in this position where I knew that you could do anything in Flutter and you could amaze users in the ways that they wouldn't even expect. And that in my freelance work, this is not a place to do it. Like in the freelance work, I just display the data. So I lived in those two worlds separately. And this changed around 2.5 years ago when I joined Cheddar. Cheddar is a fintech startup located in Netherlands and in the UK. Since the early days of Cheddar, we picked Flutter, but not only to save money, to have only one mobile team instead of 2 teams, but also to actually embrace what Flutter allows us to do. So to amaze users with the banking experience that they haven't seen in their normal applications. Quickly, what Cheddar does is it allows users to link their current banking applications into Cheddar, and then it basically enhances the banking experience. It allows you to request money from friends, send money to friends, pay by QR code without any account numbers, any sort codes. It allows you to have all the transactions in one place and even earn cashback on your transactions. So basically, the idea of Cheddar is to enhance the user experience for the financing operations. And we are currently available only in the UK, and we're at above 50K users. And today, I would like to share with you my journey in Cheddar so far. What challenges I had regarding animations, how I approached them, what we can learn from them, and basically how to enhance our applications. Since we'll be talking about UI, you could expect some advanced topics. However, it will be not during this presentation. We will be not talking about fragment shaders. We will completely leave out render objects. We will ignore slivers, and we will not even touch math. So you can all relax. It will be very, very straightforward. What we will use, though, is animation controller. We'll use a stack, And we use implicit animation widgets like animated opacity or things like that. And with those widgets and the class, we will try to enhance user experience. Starting with a very, I would say, simple animation, I will focus on the one on the bottom when the text is being switched currently. So you can see that when the state changes, the text changes as well. And the new text comes from the bottom and the old text fades away to the top. So how we would create this effect? We would start with our widget. I would call it switching text widget, which just displays the text. And if we want to animate switching some widget, usually the good starting point is animated switcher. It's a very cool widget that allows us to basically animate transitions between widgets. And with this code, the effect would be what you see on the right. So there's no animation, right? There's no animation because animated switcher looks for changes in the widget, and currently it always sees the same text widget, so it doesn't animate. But we can easily fix that by providing key to this text. Then whenever text changes, it sees that it changed, and it makes the text fade through. But it's not exactly the effect that we had in the app. So we can provide transition builder to the animated switcher. And here we are, it accepts child and the animation. This animation will drive both entrance and exit of the widget. And here we use fade transition. This is the default implementation of animated switcher, so actually this doesn't change anything in the UI. However, we can also add slide transition that will have an animation that is constructed with a twin. And here we set the beginning, which is offset above like the baseline of our widget, and the end, which is the offset.0, which is where the widget where we want it normally. And adding this slide transition creates this effect, where widgets come and go to the top and from the top, which is closer, but not exactly what we had. We want to have new widgets come from the bottom and old widgets go to the top. And to do that, we need to know if the child that we're currently animating is the new child or the old child. And there is a very easy way to do it, which is just comparing keys. We can compare keys of the child that is being animated with the child that is sent to the animation switcher, and based on that, we just set a different offset. So this will cause the effect that you see on the right, where the new widget comes from the bottom and the old widget comes to the top. And notice that this whole switching text accepts only text. It has no business logic inside it. It doesn't know what text it will display. And because of that, it's very reusable. And we started to use this effect in other places in the app. So here, it's the same widget that you can also see like this animation. So I know this point is pretty obvious, but make your widgets reusable. Your animation widgets, if they are actually reusable, it's much easier for us to, reuse them in many places in our app. Next, I want to share with you a story of how we created the whole processing flow of the app that you saw before. I couldn't find the actual designs that we had at this point, but the designs were more or less like that. Initially, we had a redirecting screen. Then user on the second screen is being redirected to their own banking application where they need to authorize the payment, and then the payment is sent back in Cheddar. And I assume some of you know that there is a huge thing between second and the third slide, which is a processing state, right? At least I have this experience that many times designers just think, yeah, user clicked and there is success, while we know that there are some different branches that we need to think about, right? And I used to be annoyed when I've seen things like that. Obviously this design is missing crucial parts. But at some point, I switched my thinking, and I started to consider those cases as opportunities, because that's what they are. They're opportunities for us, developers, to add something from ourselves. So that if there is something missing in the design, we could potentially improve user experience and add something from ourselves and add those nice animations, because, well, why not, right? Yeah, so the whole animation looks like that. Yeah, so, okay. I didn't have the designs, so I needed to come up with something. So I came up with that. Those 4 dots animation, we had it before, so I thought it would be pretty cool to have like the bank logo on the left, the Cheddar logo on the right, this animation in the middle, so it kind of like indicates that the money is going from your bank application through Cheddar, right? So initially, yeah, we see this icon, then they go to the sides, then go back to the center, they merge, and after a short delay, the check icon appears and the text changes. So how should we do this effect? We'll start with seeing what are the states that we have, and there is a redirecting screen, then there is a processing state, not screen, processing state, and there is a completed state, like completely normal thing that there's nothing crazy about it. We'll create an enum out of that, and we'll reuse it to drive our widgets animation. Next, we should think about what widgets we actually see on the screen. So we can see the bank logo. We can see this horizontal loader animation. We can see the Cheddar logo, animated text that changes what is being displayed, and the check icon. So those are the 5 widgets that actually are the parts of this whole animation. Let's keep them on the right to not lose track of them. And let's see how the code of this whole animation would look like. We'll start with the widget I called connecting with bank view. It accepts a bank and the connecting bank state. And in general, what is there is we have a stack, and in that stack we have 4 widgets: animated loader, animated Cheddar logo, animated bank logo, and animated checked icon. They all, by default, one on top of another. And below the stack, we just have an animated switching text. And notice that all those widgets are completely separate. So let's take them on one by one and see how we can make them move the way we want. Starting with the animated loader. Unfortunately, because I promised you no math, I will not explain to you how to do those 4 dots that fade from left to right, because that would include some math. So we will just have a horizontal loader as this widget, and we'll focus on animating that. And if we look at the screens on the right, you can see that initially there is no horizontal loader, then it's being displayed, and then we just don't see it again. And to achieve this effect, we can just use animated opacity widget. And based on the state, if it's processing, then we can set it to 1, otherwise to 0. This will cause this horizontal loader to smoothly appear when the state is processing, and then smoothly disappear when it's not processing. And that's it for the horizontal loader. Then for the animated bank logo, we can see that it starts at the center of the screen, then it moves to the left, and then it moves again to the center. And that's what this bank logo does. So to achieve this effect, we can just wrap the bank avatar with the animated align widget and animate the alignment. So if the state is processing, we want this bank logo to be aligned to the left. If it's not, then to the center. And this will create this effect of bank logo going to the left and to the center. For the Cheddar logo, the movement is basically the same, but in the opposite direction. So we will just, again, use animated align to move it to the right. Now, it would just make a nicer effect if this logo would also fade away when they merge, so I just added also animated opacity. So we just used animated align and animated opacity to create those effects. For the animated switching text, luckily we have already created the widget for it, so we'll use our switching text widget. And all we need to do is just map the state to the text that we want to display. Obviously, in the production app, this would be localized and things like that, but we can use it like that. So this is our widget. And you may notice that we didn't cover the check icon. And the thing is, with check icon, it actually happens after those bank logo and cheddar logo merge, then check icon appears. If it was just a design challenge, I would just say that after the completed state, there will be fourth enum value of like fully completed state that will cause another effect. But this would also mean that outside of this widget, everyone needs to know that there is a completed and a fully completed. And let's face it, that's not how we structure like our apps. There is no completed and fully completed, just completed. So what we will try to do is we will try to make our widget have this fully completed feature in it that basically adds to the animation after the delay. So we'll make our widget stateful instead of stateless, and we'll just provide we'll add boolean of is fully completed. And what we can do is we can use did update widget from the state. That will be called whenever properties of the widget change. We can see if the old widget was completed and if the new widget is completed. And if it wasn't completed and now it is completed, means it's changed to completed. And if we detect this, we could just delay, with a delay of 1 second, change this flag, right? So basically after state is completed, we wait 1 second and change this flag. Then all we need to do is pass this flag to the widgets that are like being affected by it. And animated check icon is the widget that I didn't show you. It's aligned to the bottom right corner, and we use animated scale. And this animated scale, what it will do is basically if this is fully completed is true, it will just make the icon like scale to 1. Otherwise, it was invisible. And for the animated switching text, after we add the Boolean flag, all we need to change is what text we display when it's completed. So we will say, we'll show the completed text only when it's completed and fully completed. And with that, we have this effect of icons going to the sides and to the middle, and the text being changed, and the check icon appears later. And notice that we used very, very, very simple widgets, like animated alignment, animated opacity, animated scale. Like that's it, basically. And because we extracted very simple contract to that widget, basically we had this enum of 3 states. We have noticed, like in the app, that we have similar flows in other places of the app. So this is the payment screen, but we also have linking a new bank account where user is also redirected to the bank and then back to Cheddar. And we were able to reuse this because it's just redirecting, processing, and completed. So because we have extracted this very basic enum, like those 2 flows have completely different states, completely different view models. They're completely different. We just map those states to a very simple enum so that we can reuse those animations. Yeah, and this, basically the story of this processing screen is mostly concludes with look for opportunities. Like those designs, we didn't have designs for this animation. It was a blank spot that I just saw and decided, let's use it for creating a nice effect. And this nice effect is something that users actually like. It provides this nice flavor in our app. So it's not only on the designer, right? We can add things from ourselves. And also, make your widgets look simple to the outside world. The simpler the animation widget is, the easier it will be for you to reuse it. And the easier it will be basically to just have it in many places of the app. Your animation widgets shouldn't know if you're using Riverpod or Qubit or GetX or whatever. They shouldn't care about it. They should be as simple as possible. All right, next I will talk about splash screens. I really like animated splash screens. I think it is a great way to start user's journey with a nice effect, with nice animation. So I decided to do a similar thing in Cheddar. And this effect is, well, actually, we have this effect. How we can achieve this effect? It may seem complex at start. So what happens exactly here is we have initially the Cheddar text logo Then this cheddar logo fades away to the right with the C only standing. Then the yellow background shrinks, and then there is this square with the bigger cheddar logo. You may think, okay, like this is cool, but splash screens are kind of native stuff, not Flutter stuff. The easiest way to do splash screen animations is to just have the native splash screen look exactly as the first frame of Flutter code. And then we can just seamlessly start Flutter animations without really worrying too much about native. Simon Lightfoot did mention it yesterday on his talk when he was telling about how we can wait till we load everything before we switch from the native splash screen to the Flutter splash screen. So it's doable. We can just start with the animation, like with the Flutter animation. How can we achieve this effect? Let's start with we have our splash screen widget, and the splash screen widget is mostly just a container, a yellow container that has full width, full height. And inside this container, we have a stack with cheddar text logo and cheddar icon logo. Those are on top of each other. And the cheddar icon logo, the small c, it's basically we just positioned it exactly on the C of the bigger cheddar text logo, right? It's aligned to the left because by default stack has alignment to the top left. So we have this initial view. Now we want to somehow navigate through this animation. We want to have some entity that will control all the animations that we have for the splash screen. And this entity would be an animation controller. Animation controller is a great thing for controlling animations, so why wouldn't we use it? And this animation controller, we can split it into multiple animations. So here you would have movement animation for the first cheddar text movement, and then we would have shrink animation for the background shrinking. And the movement animation will be responsible for animating specific widgets, and the shrink animation will be responsible for animating other widgets. And all of them are connected to one animation controller. How it looks in practice, we have an animation controller we create animation controller with movement animation and shrink animation. And in the init state, we create this animation controller. And then we create movement animation and shrink animation. You can notice here we are using curved animations with intervals. Now what are intervals is basically they make animations take only part of their parent. So the movement animation will start at 0.0 and at 0.4, meaning it will take first 40% of the whole animation. And the shrink animation will start at 0.6 and at 1, so it will take the last 40% of the whole animation. So after we create those animations, we need to make animation controller go forward. Now let's get to the build method. And in the build method, we wrap everything in the animation builder. We will not worry, we will not think right now about extracting some childs, to make animations more performant. In this case, basically everything is animated, so we just can have one builder method. And inside this builder method, we can just wrap cheddar text logo with slide transition that we used before. And we can provide a position, and this time it will start at the offset 0, so it will start where it's supposed to be, and then it will go to the right. And it will be driven by the movement animation. So this will cause this effect, which is close, but not enough. So what we can also do is just simply wrap with opacity and do 1 minus movement animation that value to have this cheddar text logo fade away. Then if you want to have the C also go to the center, instead of animating the cheddar icon logo, we can animate the alignment of the stack. And we can say that the alignment should animate from center left to center alongside the movement animation. And with this, the C will go to the center. So that's the movement animation. Then if you want to think about the shrink animation of this container shrinking, we'll just simply change the width and the height from full screen to 128. And we'll use shrink animation to drive it. Also, we will provide a decoration to have the circular border radius, basically, so that square has rounded corners. And also, it uses a shrink animation to do that. And for the Cheddar icon logo, we'll also animate it, so it goes from, basically, it gets bigger to 72 from 36. And again, it uses the shrink animation. All of that will have this effect, which is, I think, pretty cool. I think it's pretty cool. And notice that, again, there's nothing complex about it, right? It's kind of simple. We just had animation controller to drive all of that. The conclusion from this part is start with animations. Like, don't wait up for later in the screen, for later in your app to add those animations to amaze the users. Have this first experience of user entering your app. Make it nice already. You don't need to wait for later. And speaking about the first experience, this is the full first experience users have in our app. We created this like onboarding flow that is styled like Instagram stories, where basically we just show to the user like what is the value of Cheddar. And everything that you see here, actually I will split it to you into 3 pages. Each of those stories is full widgets, like there is no Rive, no Lottin or anything. This is everything widgets. Unfortunately, I will not be able to talk about how to implement each of those stories. What's important though is all of them are separate widgets. And if we want to have this one continuous flow, again, we will start with our friend animation controller. We'll have one animation controller that will control everything that we see. So this animation controller, similarly, will be divided to animations. It will be animation for the first story, animation for the second story, and the animation for the third story. So we have those 3 animations, and each of those animations will drive the movement of each of the widgets in the given story. They will be separate. How to implement it? We'll start with the onboarding view state of our widget with the animation controller. In the init state, you can notice that the animation controller has a very long duration because it covers all the steps that we have in our onboarding. And we're calling animation controller.repeat, so that when the animation ends, it starts over. Then we'll create the page boundaries. Page boundaries are basically breakpoints of each of the stories. So this means that the first story will end at 0.25, the second at 0.75, and the third at 1 of the whole animation controller's animation. And with that, we can easily create list of animations for each of the stories. So to have this page animation getter, we just iterate over the page boundaries and create an interval animation for each of the stories. So the first story will start at 0 and end at 0.25, the second at 0.25, and then to 0.75, and so on. So this way we create the animation for each of the story. And what we'll also need is a getter for the current step, which is basically just checking which of the page boundaries have been passed by the animation controller, and a getter for current animation, which is just getting page animations of current step of page animations. With all those getters, we can go to the build method that will have an animated builder at start. And we will use our friend animated switcher that we started with our presentation. Because this is what actually happens here is, based on the current step, we select which of those widgets should be displayed. So here we have onboarding page cashback widget, onboarding page chat, and onboarding page intro. And notice that each of those widgets is accepting an animation only responsible for this part of the story. So they don't know about the animation controller behind all of it. They just know about this one little hand that is controlling this part. Okay, so we have that, but what about this page indicator on the top? Right? We don't want just to display, like to switch widgets. We also want to show the progress. Now to implement it, we will create a widget called onboarding page indicator that will just accept parameters like animated current page animation value, current page index, and the number of pages, and we'll put it above the main content in a column. And this widget will be structured in a way where for each of the stories, we'll have a big, like wide container, and inside that wide container, we'll have a yellow container that will show what is the progress of the given story. And here we are using fractionally sized box to determine for each of those yellow containers how much of the white container it should use. And since I said that it is for each of the stories, we'll just wrap it in a row and we'll generate such a widget for each of the stories. And how to calculate this percentage of what we need to show? We will just check if the current page index has passed the page that we are generating a widget for. If it passed, it's 1. If it hasn't passed, it's 0. If you're on the current page, we can just use current page animation to know how much of this story we should take. And that's the whole progress indicator. Now you may ask, what about the gestures, right? The stories, you can tap to the right, tap to the left, you can hold to stop the animation. Can we do it? Yes, we can. In our onboarding view state, in our build method, in the state, we will create some methods to control our animation controller. So we will have pause method that will just cause the animation controller to stop. We'll have resume method so that after user takes away the finger, we can continue with our animation. Then we'll have go next method, which is basically just checking for the next page boundary. And we can set this page boundary to the animation controller that value. And with that, we just switch to the next story. And we call repeat to continue with the animation. And similarly to go back, to the go next, we'll have go back, which just gets the previous page boundary and sets the animation controller value to that page boundary and lets the animation go forward. Having those 4 methods, we'll go back to our build method. We'll wrap our widget with a stack because stacks are awesome. And on top of everything that we show on the screen, we'll have a gesture detector layer that will be on top of everything that user sees. That will have those 4 parameters. And this gesture detector layer is a simple gesture detector widget that has a behavior of hidden behavior of opaque, meaning that when user clicks on the empty screen, it will also work. On the empty space of the screen, it will also work. And then we just pass the parameters, like on long press down, we want the animation to pause. When user removes the finger, it will resume, and on tap, it will go to the next page. And however, this is not the full stories feature because on the stories can also go back, right? So to allow user to go also back, we'll just have 2 gesture detectors, and we'll put them in a row, wrap them with expandeds. So we'll have 1 gesture detector on the left that takes half of the screen and goes to the previous story, and the 1 gesture detector on the right that also takes half of the screen and go to the next story. And with all of that, we have just created stories in Flutter without any packages, without basically any complex topics, with just animation controller that is passed to animations that drives the animation, that drives what widgets should look like and what they should do. Now you may ask, if we create this complex animation like that, is it testable, right? Can we test such complex things? And yes, it is. Luckily, we can know in the Dart code if we are currently running inside a Flutter test. So I like to have this global variable of knowing if we are currently running in the Flutter test. And what we can do for this ongoing animation, we can run it only if we are not in the Flutter test. So basically, if we're in the test, we'll just not run this animation. And this way, we can do things like pump and settle, right? It will not time out because there is no animation ongoing. And if we, for example, have golden tests and we want to see how each of the pages look like and be sure that they look correctly, we can just access this animation controller if it's public or preferably also marked as visible for testing. And we can access it with the tester and just set the animation controller value. And this way, we can easily see that how the animation looks at each step if we want. Okay, so that was quite a journey, right? We have seen they seemed like a complex animations, And we have created this like payment flow. We have created those stories, the splash screen animation. They seemed pretty complex at start, but when you think about it, all we used is animation controller, we used stack, and we used implicit animation widgets like animated opacity or like animated alignment, right? We didn't do anything complicated. And you may ask, like, what changes if my app is being used by tens of thousands of users, right? Because this seems kind of like straightforward, like what changes? And like, the answer is not much. Whatever we have learned, about the animations, it still works for the broader like amount of users. So the main conclusion that I want you to all like remember from this talk is that no matter if your app has 50 users, or if it has 50K users like Cheddar, or if it has 50 million users, which I wish you all that it happens, we as developers can always make it beautiful. We shouldn't wait for designers to tell us to do it. We shouldn't feel that, okay, like this is work, so no, like let's leave it for some YouTube videos. We can always make those apps beautiful. And on that note, I want to thank you all for listening.